Therapy Talks, the podcast. I am your host, Masudah Muhammad, and I have with me here Miss Shalizahr Belgrove. She is a body soul therapist, and today she's going to shed some light on intergenerational trauma and how it affects us in the Caribbean, because the Caribbean culture is so diverse that sometimes we want an idea and we come from so many different cultural backgrounds. But how does that affect our interaction, our mental health, how we feel about ourselves, and holistically, how do we support each other in a genuine way? And I think that intergenerational trauma could shed some light on this. So now we're going to kind of delve into intergenerational trauma through Miss Belgrove, but she's going to give some details on who she is as a professional.
As you said, I am a body soul therapist, and a body soul therapist is a term that I would have created after formulating body soul therapy, simply because over the last 9 years in founding my company, Shalizahr Wellness, I would have realized that I don't focus on the mind, because your mind is a good servant but not always a great master. It can argue for and against any point very convincingly, but I have found that your body always knows, and your soul has a blueprint. We call it something that tell me, or we had an intuition, or I just had a feeling, and that's really your soul nudging you, because you came with information, you just don't know how to dissect it and translate. And after working with extensive amounts of science, I just realized that I focus more on what the body is doing, because I do psychosomatic therapy as well, and what the soul is seeing.
I find it to be very interesting, because as a mental health professional, we focus on the mind, body, and soul. But this is the first time I'm hearing about body and soul without the mind. So can you shed a little light on that in terms of how does that intermingle with intergenerational trauma?
For sure. A lot of us here in the Caribbean, we express ourselves through our bodies without realizing it. So, my blood didn't take me.
Right.
Or I didn't like her because my blood boiled. Or I get a bad feeling. Or my pores did raise. Or it might hear something like, I catch my breath. All of those things are not happening in the mind. That's happening. Or my leg went dead.
Yeah.
You hear people say things like that. Or catch a chill. Those aren't mind things. Those are language that the body is expressing to us. What does that really mean? Those are actually cues that your nervous system is activated. So you might be in fright, you might be in freeze, you might be in fawn, you might be in appease. You might be literally activating one of these triggers, because your intelligent body is creating a mechanism to support you in any given scenario without you necessarily having all the science to back up why your body wants to do it, because your body is wired to defend you. Now here in the Caribbean, from an intergenerational trauma, we find that your grandmother would have done something, and you would find you would go and ask your great grandmother or your grandmother or something, or your grandfather, and you might be like, well, why are you doing that? And the parents are there, they will say, well, something to tell me.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, that's just the shrug and be like, well, that's just how it is. But it's making sense to know what to do in making sense and giving results, but they don't have language to describe the felt sense of why they're doing what they're doing. And then we have cultural things that come to the fore that we practice without knowing why it matters and how the intelligence of the body would have informed these practices for our agency and protection in times of old. To answer the question of how body soul therapy is important to the transgenerational Caribbean experience, we are body people. We do everything with a full body. Yes, we laugh full body, we think full body, we make decisions from our body. You'll be like, I'm not feeling good.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's more like a feelings thing as opposed to a mental.
Yes, it is in connecting with your emotions, as well as, so soma is the Greek term, and soma is the body absence of the psyche.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we remove the mind, because the mind has a place, and we work together. So I might be doing something and be like, okay, this is outside of my scope of work. I need you to go by Masudah.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah.
it's not that it doesn't have a place. It's just not
Mhm.
the place that I occupy. I'm in the space of dealing with the parts that we don't always have agency or know-how, because I've realized that a lot of our cultural landscape and what is available to us is set by an American or European standard, and it is not for us by us. So over the last 9 years, I have really refined through trial and error what I was searching for. I went to many people, all sorts of services, and it just didn't hit.
Yeah.
And through extensive training and my prayer and fasting and so forth, I found this spot and I started to refine it. So I'm like, this is what we need, because our intuition is always present and our body is always communicating, but we never slow the mind down or turn it off enough to listen.
So this is similar to psycho-spirituality, where we look at the spiritual aspect of mental health. So it's more like your soul and your body, as opposed to the concept of your mind. Like how mental health professionals look at the intricacies of the mind and how it impacts a human behavior. But when you talk about just the soul and the body, it takes away the whole mental pressure in terms of your mind. So it's like your body keeps its score. Like that, right?
Correct.
I like that concept because in Trinidad and Tobago in particular, we dance a lot, right? Our culture is whining and moving.
Yeah.
And that could be healing to many, right? And when I'm not talking about the alcohol and the negative habits, but when we talk about the movements and how we love to express ourselves through movements. Now I'm talking now and my hand is moving, right?
Correct.
So it's not just only about mental health and how we think, but we can also heal ourselves through movements.
That is correct. So that's actually, the movement is actually a somatic experience.
Yeah.
Because in moving, you move the energy and the emotions through the body, and it makes room for you to build capacity.
Right.
Instead of stagnating with it, sometimes when people become anxious or depressed, they think that they want to coop up. But if they go and they dance and they move their body, they find that they find some liberation in their system and some agency to say, yes, I can do this. They feel some empowerment. They nurture their resilience and as thus have a strength that they did not know was there before.
I like that concept because, in Trinidad, again, because we're from Trinidad, we have carnival, for example, right? A lot of the times we look at carnival in the negative, but some people, especially persons who may have cultural or religious beliefs about dressing in a particular way. But for other persons, it could be a way of releasing, right? And in somatic therapy, can you give an example of how the body releases tension or emotions or any type of exhaustion through body? Like,
yes, so there's something called a trauma vortex. So let's imagine a river bank. So the water in the river is you, right? You have the banks on each side. That's your, let's say, your parameters and your boundaries. And as the flow of the river is happening, let's say a pebble drop in the river. A pebble wouldn't affect you. It's not going to cause any major ripple. You'll be like, okay, I can pass. But a boulder, some heavy rainfall, and a boulder come down in the river, and you get this big uproar. So we call that the trauma vortex. So a trauma vortex starts to happen. And what happens, it becomes like a tornado. And it builds, and you don't always realize it because your body's doing it so intentionally. So when you see trauma vortex start to build now, your body needs to find something to contain this event that has now occurred that is stopping the stream in the river. So when that happens now, you either shut down because you don't know what to do.
Right.
So you freeze.
Yeah.
Now, you pass fight and flight when you freeze. So when you're coming out of the freeze, we call it the counter vortex, which is where your movement might come in. That will be a resource that you could implement to start to take yourself out and say, okay, I'm safe, and the freeze state start to flow out of it. Right after the freeze, you're going into fight, so you'll have anger and things like that. And now you're uncoupling anger from the event to realize, okay, I have some power in myself, though my environment is communicating. So now you start to find ways to move the boulder out the water and then allow the stream to flow again by understanding that you are the river and the emotion is the river, and you could have a yes and moment. Several things can be true at once, and once you could realize it is happening for you, not against you. Your
Mhm.
body's not attacking you. It's literally saying, hey, there's something that I need my attention to be given to. Then you say, all right, you check your breath. Sometimes we hold our breath unconsciously in situations. You notice, okay, I'm alive and I have breath. Then you move from that breath, and then that gives you some form of power to now make an informed decision where your mind will come in and say yes or no, which direction we want to go. But first, the body communicates that by breathing or running or just sitting still there until it could find a way to discharge and then move through the vortex again.
Okay, that is an interesting take on trauma. The trauma response. So the fight, flight, or freeze response, and we, of course, use the mind because I'm a clinical therapist. So I look at how the mind responds to trauma. So let's say, for example, you're in a relationship that is abusive, for example, right? Your body might shut down in that relationship and you may lose touch with your body. So you may think that you are losing control essentially, right? But using the concept of somatic therapy, you could take control of the situation by understanding how your body responds to the negative stimuli or the negative behavior that your partner might be exhibiting in the relationship, right? And for persons who want to heal, for persons who want to use somatic therapy, does it have any techniques that they can use to self-regulate? Because this is essentially what we should be doing or may need support to do, right? Because we are not taught emotional regulation.
That is very key, and I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
Listen. So several things that you brought up there, and I'll go through them one by one. Yes, there are tools you can use to self-regulate. Now, somatic therapy is different to talk therapy from the standpoint of talk therapy. You deal with what come up in the session immediately as it comes. You would guide the client through the session from top to bottom. It may have the ability to re-traumatize the nervous system in the process. Unintentional. It's not that you set out to re-traumatize the person, but it can happen because the body keeps score. I often tell clients their body is an alarm clock because there's this psychosomatic component where the mind and the body communicate. For example, if you have a knee pain, the psychosomatic for knee pain is you're being rigid on a decision somewhere in your life. So you're not flexing because your knees, your joints, the way you're flexing. So your body is communicating to you, hey, the thought you're having here, you're too rigid on it, so you get a pain here. But you're not trained in that, so you would not be able to communicate, hey, my body is doing this, so I need to check in with it.
Yeah.
Especially because it's so far apart. Your knee and your head is very far from each other on the body. You're not really going to be like, oh, my knee is this. You wouldn't realize. But last night I quarreled with my husband and I didn't want to flex on who using the car today, for example. I insisted that I had to use the car and my knee hit it. You would not connect that.
Right. So your body might be sending signals, but you're not in tune enough to know that this is related to a prior argument or some type of trigger or some type of stress that you are experiencing in your life currently.
Correct.
But your body will be sending out those signals.
Correct. Because your conscious mind already onto something else, but the body's still keeping the score.
Yeah.
Remember, you started by talking about the body keeping the score. So if the body is keeping the score, then not because your mind move on mean your body move on. You didn't address your body. You didn't bring any awareness to say, hey, I noticed that you're doing this. And why? Why are you doing this? Is it something that I did? Is it actually a medical issue? Is it something that is emotionally based? Is it stored energy? What do I do to support myself? But as you said, we haven't been trained emotionally for emotional regulation or nervous system regulation for a matter of fact. Because this is something people engage with somatics through yoga, but yoga is a community. Everybody not into yoga, and people have different religious views on yoga, even though it may not be presenting concepts that may be contrary to theirs, but because of the indoctrination, they may not be open-minded enough to accept a new way of stretching or being whatever for what. So yoga is a somatic practice, dancing is a somatic practice, running, walking, all of those are movement things that allows the energy to flow through your body. When we're thinking about the therapy, in somatic therapy, we titrate. Remember when you did general science in school, you had a pipette, and you would use the pipette to just drop into the little drops of water. So that's how we do therapy. Yes, we want to hear what you have to say because everybody wants to hear it. But more than that, I want to observe what is happening in your body in the present moment as you recant your experience. Is your body bracing as you say it? Is it reliving the experience and bringing it into the present? So you have the agency to see, okay, this is not 5-year-old you.
Yes.
This is 32-year-old you. 43-year-old you. Can you differentiate? And now there's a pattern that we realize that intergenerationally, a lot of us have inherited patterns. And because in this generation, I personally believe that we have been given the agency and the capacity to hold more, we are unpacking things that aren't ours. We'll be unpacking things that our parents carried, our grandparents carried, things from colonialism, because we have a different emotional capacity and desire to live. So when we start to see that, we're like, okay, for example, when I was going into business, I read all the books, coached with all the people and did all the things, and it didn't work. And I couldn't understand why it didn't work. But when I did a training with Louise A. and somatic, psychosomatic, and I realized, oh wait, I did not have the capacity in my nervous system based on the developmental trauma that I had to hold what I was doing. So in my mind, I have all the information and I intellectualized it and I rationalized it, but my body could not hold it.
That is interesting because I was about to ask you about the intergenerational link in terms of are we born with trauma?
Yes, there is a pre and perinatal trauma that you could inherit from whatever your mother was experiencing and how what was the conversation between the parents, if it was supportive or non-supportive, and from that fetal state you come into life with a nervous system that's already shot.
Wow.
Because a baby literally doesn't have a nervous system of its own. It relies on its mother's nervous system until it's lives.
And you know, sometimes we think that we are going through something and it's a situation that we are currently experiencing, but what you're saying there, we can get it could pass through our generations. It may not be a trauma that we are currently going through, but it could be from our parents. And that is so true. And some of us have ailments because of the trauma.
Yes, autoimmune diseases and all these things are even more common now than they've ever been before. Because a lot of people are grieved and living in absolute horror and terror. And only in the last training that I did, I realized that I had a new relationship to horror in particular, because we learned that horror is more than emotion. It's a nervous system reaction. And I was like, that is so interesting, because you can be so horrified at the state of your life unconsciously that you are literally undermining. And we will name it imposter syndrome, people pleasing, self-sabotage. But is it really? Or is it as a result of your transgenerational trauma that may have stemmed from religious abuse, may have stemmed from child torture? Is it a pattern that is underlying that you self-flagellating and giving it to you when it is bigger than you? Have we asked that question, and is that a consideration that we are willing to explore, because these things are true. And when I say child torture, things like grooming, things like human trafficking, things like bullying by siblings and peers for being different, being able to things like religious abuse, cults, things like colonized spaces, things like Catholic schools, the indictment to Catholic schools. It could, if you come from an environment that is very supportive and you enter a Catholic school system, you could be culture shocked as a child, and you would not be supported because it's regimented in a very prison-like format. It's not supportive to learning anything because you feel like you're being punished to learn. So when you in that pattern of being punished to get a result, who is it really serving? Is it serving the punisher? And or how is it supportive to the person being punished? It's not.
Yeah.
It's a very selfish, it's another coercive control that then comes alive in your pattern, and then you train your body now is trained to do this appeasement dance.
Yeah.
And you know this is your normal state. You don't know anything different, so you interacting with society and you're like, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with her? But there's nothing wrong. That's their normal. They don't have any other reference point to show, well, there's another way. Yeah. And most of us lived a lot of our lives in danger and did not know. Because if some of the people who would have done these tortures would have been upstanding leaders in the community and society, and if you go to the neighbor or to school and you say, well, my uncle do so, they'll be like, your uncle do that? Yeah. And then you feel trapped in an inescapable attack now of there's no authority figure who believes you enough to stand in the gap to even investigate or question this person because of the persona, the outward persona that is given. And then as a child, you don't have agency over yourself. You're still relying on this system for your life. And this is how a lot of transgenerational trauma continues.
Wow, that is so deep, because you was talking, right? And I was thinking about the hierarchy type of parents when we have in the Caribbean, where our parents are in charge and we are just like little soldiers. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Right? And we can't question our parents, because if you talk too much, you'll be in trouble. If you don't talk at all, you'll get in trouble. If you cry, you're going to get licks for crying. If you're not crying, oh, you want some licks to cry, because why are you not crying when I'm beating you? You think you're better than me, right? You think you're in charge. So all this type of parenting, we didn't grow up in an environment where our parents was like safe spaces. Our parents was, a lot of us, at least for me, I was scared of my parents, right?
Me too.
That's the reality of us growing up. We feared authority. So, of course, it's that obvious as you grow older as an adult. You might just fear authority as an adult. And all of this stems from the whole dynamic in terms of intergenerational trauma. You have to listen to the boss. Your parents is the boss, and whether your parents healthy or unhealthy, they are in charge of you.
And even if you take it a little deeper and you go to a national level,
yeah,
you take that same boss mentality and you apply it to you.
Yes.
So your manager becomes your parent, and you submit to your manager or your supervisor or the director or whoever from that disempowered place, because you want to appease them, because you don't want to be punished for doing something differently, and you don't want to speak up because you don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers, or you don't want to feel uncomfortable because it's an emotional response. You're not dealing with facts anymore. Yeah. You're dealing with emotions and ensuring that you appease this person, which is control. When you look at Willie Lynch and Willie Lynch's letter and things like that, and how they chose to break and buck a person and a man and a woman into subjection, you literally see that fear is the best weapon of control. And we still operate as a highly fear-based society. When you look at how people respond to news, they don't see the thing as neutral. You either assign a very negative connotation, and very few people put a positive. The easiest thing is to go the negative route. And, oh my God, this boy is me, and chicken little, the sky is falling. But
yes,
that's literally where people go, and I'm like, but is it really that though? Can you see how in the midst of this chaos we can find clarity? Can you see that this is an opportunity for us as a nation to be resilient, to apply the together we aspire, together we achieve motto? Like, is this an opportunity or an invitation for us to gather as one with discipline, tolerance, the little watch words that we have now, like, are we dutiful enough to find that within self? And is it that we want it and don't have the agency or the capacity to do it because we've never had that model, sir?
And this is where collective trauma comes in, right? We are traumatized as a collective, a group of us. And as exactly what Shalizahr was saying, control is like the nucleus of intergenerational trauma. You need control in order for the trauma to continue. And your parents have to be the one perpetuating the trauma and reinforcing the trauma. I am in charge, you are small. a simple act like beating, licks. Most of us grew up with licks, right? If you do not listen to me, I am going to pull out my belt and whip you. Now, there's numerous studies that indicate that, licks is not healthy for children. I know that some persons will disagree because the concept in the Caribbean is that, you have to hit your children in order for them to grow up to be productive people, but they grow up very scared and very traumatized, right? But the somatic therapy talks about that type of trauma as well, like in terms of, so if you can shed some light on that.
So you saying that, and all I thinking about in my head is, well, the licks never kill me, and it never kill you. The licks never kill you. People say that. I've heard others say that, like, well, it do you real good. Look at you. Look how you turn out. They say things like that, and even that in itself doesn't give room for repair or improvement when it is we find ways to justify the behaviors or the actions of the past. Yes, physical abuse is something that greatly impairs the nervous system. And domestic violence in particular literally gives the nervous system, so most persons who have experienced it, that's of almost a woman. So they usually have PTSD or CPTSD attached to their nervous systems and require gentler care. So yes, there are tools that are supportive, but it is a slower method. In this work, the fastest way to go is slow. Because you have to train and build agency for the system to know, well, first I am safe. Because they don't have any concept of safety. They're looking for danger, and some of them become hyper vigilant, high performing, high functioning, because they're just looking for how to be out of the way. Because you don't know what's coming when it comes in. So just caring for the system in a way that really supports the relief and the completion of the same trauma vortex you were talking about, because you can have incomplete cycles, especially if many things are happening at once, which in the Caribbean many things are always happening at once.
All the time.
You might have this trauma cycle here and it's incomplete, and then this other trauma already big. So you didn't get to complete this cycle, so this one came and met it. And when that happens, now you have a snowball of traumas that's now over and under coupled for you to now navigate on your own without any concept of what even a trauma might be.
And as you were saying that, I thought of even our buffing culture. It extends outside of your parent-child relationship into the workplace, because I heard people say, I was buffed by my supervisor. And that also reinforced dominance, reinforced superiority, and it also sends a message that you are disempowered. And I love that you use the word disempowered, because that happens to us as a child. As a child, we are disempowered in preschool. Go here, rules, walk over there, all these different rules. Now, rules are there, yes, to keep order, but some rules are there to reinforce control and dominance and leadership that is very toxic. Because not all leadership is positive, as we know, right? And that is the type of culture that we have in the Caribbean, this kind of dominating kind of culture. And it also goes back into indentureship as well, slavery. And this is where intergenerational trauma impacts us directly. Even though, and I heard some people say, but I was not a slave, my parents was not slaves, but it impacts us in terms of this is the type of grooming, the type of molding that we have as adults, right?
That's true. Fear is one of the main things that people use to parent. When you come in from fear, you don't give the child even the opportunity to explore to be curious. So you cut their imagination before it gets even born. That's one. Two, systemic trauma is a very real thing. And yes, everybody may not have a descendants of slavery or indentureship and so forth, but look around. We live in a society that is established on a colonized structure. We don't live in a decolonized space. We still under the Westminster system. We still literally using the colonizers' blueprint. So until we step off from that, this is everybody's problem.
Yeah.
It is everyone's responsibility to take agency over self. Should they choose to do so, it's an invitation to really ask yourself the important question. Okay, yes, it may not be bloodline, but it is structure.
Yeah. That is so deep, because sometimes we think it does not apply to us. It didn't happen to me.
Over there thing.
Yeah, that's a them problem. Like in Trinidad, we have different districts and regions that we don't go into because we think it's not. We have the areas in Trinidad and everybody knows about it. And I think if this is an international thing, where that is considered a bad area, a crime-riddled area, and it does not affect us. And that is not the reality. We are all in a country, right? And whatever is impacting the country is impacting everybody in the country. And if a natural disaster were to hit us at any point, it's going to affect you regardless of where you live in, regardless of who your family is. And so as a collective, we do experience different types of social issues as a collective. Guys, the conversation is so heated that we lost connectivity. So we will have to do a part 2. And I want you to stay tuned, because as I told you in the beginning, Shalizahr is a powerhouse and she has a wealth of information. And we will definitely be back with a part 2 to share some more insights on intergenerational trauma and how it impacts us as a Caribbean collective.